Hi, and welcome to North County Land Trust's presentation on managing Dwelly Farm Conservation Area. My name is Jassy Bratko, and I'm the Director of Land Protection for North County Land Trust. We're a regional land trust that serves 14 cities and towns in northern Worcester County, from Templeton and Westminster in the west to Townsend and Lancaster in the east. Our mission is to conserve the farms, forests, and landscapes that define the character of our region. We identify natural resources and landscapes whose conservation is of the highest priority, and we conserve land in perpetuity for future generations. We also engage members of the public to understand and appreciate their natural environment and the importance of conservation. We do this by leading guided hikes and educational walks, such as owl prowls, which we've done right here at Dwelly. Over the last 25 years, we have acquired 650 acres of conservation land, and we have 7 conservation areas that are open to the public for multi-use recreation on well-maintained trails. We hold conservation restrictions on a further 450 acres, and we have facilitated the permanent protection of a further 3,500 acres. We're here today at our Dwelly Farm Conservation Area on Barre Road in Templeton. Beginning this spring, North County Land Trust will begin a 5-year intensive land management strategy to remove invasive plants, introduce native plants and pollinators, restore a meadow, and improve the habitat for the American woodcock. Our goal over the next 10 years is to make Dwelly Farm a haven for native species and a showcase for native wild plants. This 68-acre property was purchased by the Dwelly family in 1912, who ran a dairy farm here until 1969. It was bequeathed to North County Land Trust by David Dwelly in 2010, and the Templeton Conservation Commission holds a conservation restriction on the property. The property is unique because of its diversity. There are fields which are remnants of its past as a dairy farm. There is a young woodland with plentiful white birch, more mature woodlands with hardwoods, and some that consist mostly of hemlocks. There is a stream and a wooded marsh bisects the property that is crossed by a 40-foot bridge. The diverse habitat of forests, forest edges, old fields, and wet meadows provide great habitat for American woodcock and leads to a great variety of other wildlife. We've developed a looped, well-maintained and marked trail system that winds its way through the entire conservation area, providing visitors with an easy way to explore these various habitats. This trail is named in honor of David Dwelly. Since acquiring the property, North County Land Trust has consulted with land management professionals, including Broad Arrow Forestry, the Natural Resource and Conservation Service, and Mass Wildlife, to develop a sound management plan for the conservation area. There was a timber harvest several years before North County acquired the land. Over time, the landing area where the logs were brought has become infested by invasive plant species such as glossy buckthorn and Japanese knotweed that are now spreading throughout the entire property. These thugs of the plant world crowd out native plant species, reducing the population of native plants and the birds, animals, and insects that depend on them for their survival. We plan to remove the invasives, encourage the native plants, and restore a healthy ecosystem to the property. We plan to honor the agricultural past of the land by reclaiming an abandoned field that will be planted with pollinators and help improve the habitat for woodcocks and other species. Our goals are to maintain a multi-use trail system to encourage passive recreation, encourage growth of native plants, enhance the habitat, and educate the public on the importance of native plants and problems with invasive plants. Let's go take a look at what we plan to do. This is Japanese knotweed. It's one of the world's most invasive plants and has earned the nickname of Godzilla weed. It was introduced to the US as an ornamental plant that rapidly spread. Growing up to 10 feet high, this herbaceous plant is so strong it can push through asphalt and concrete, and it rapidly outcompetes native plants. Luckily, it's established along a relatively small area of Dwelly, right along the road, but the goal is to eradicate it before it takes over. An aggressive stand of glossy buckthorn is rapidly spreading from this landing area and choking out native flowers, grasses, shrubs, and trees. Glossy buckthorn is native to Eurasia, but was introduced to this country to be used as a hedge and, ironically, for wildlife habitat. This small tree grows about 20 feet high and creates dense thickets that rapidly outcompete the native plants. You can see behind these white birch the dense thicket of glossy buckthorn. Its berries range in color from red to black and are enjoyed by birds and small mammals, but they provide little nutrition and can actually cause nutritional deficiencies in wildlife. It's extremely difficult to control because its seeds are widely dispersed by the wildlife that eat them, and the more plants are cut, the more the stems shoot up. At Dwelly Farm, dense thickets of buckthorn can be found in some areas, like this, in the young woodland, and around the fields, but it is spreading throughout the entire property. In the summer, the branches are so weighed down with berries that they can block the trails. Over the next 3 years, North County Land Trust will work with Land Stewardship Inc. to chemically treat and mechanically remove the buckthorn in over 30 acres, including most of the woodlands and fields. I personally was extremely reluctant to use chemicals for controlling these plants, but since visiting the property, I've seen how tenacious and destructive these two thugs can be. If left alone, they'll take over and destroy the habitat for our native species. It seems a wise trade-off to use chemicals for a finite period of time to give us a fighting chance to control these invasive plants. The shrubs will be cut down and the stems will be directly treated. Of course, there is a large seedbed of buckthorn in the soil. North County will work with volunteers from now and many years to come to mechanically remove new buckthorn seedlings that emerge. It will require a lot of vigilance and a lot of help, and volunteers will be very welcome. You can see here an example of how buckthorn is difficult to remove. This was originally one tree that was cut down because it was in the trail. Every time it's cut, it sends out more and more of these little stems. The more you cut it, the more stems it produces. This is what we would like to see on this property: native birch and native pine. But if you look just behind, all of these trees that you see behind is that dense thicket of glossy buckthorn. This is a bridge that's been constructed over a small stream to accommodate a tractor that we'll use to maintain the fields that you see behind me. The buckthorn has spread from the landing area and is now invading our fields and the field edges. You can see this shrubby edge is filled with the stuff, and yet, although you can't see it now, it's also established itself throughout the field. Once it's been controlled in this area, we hope to plant these edges with native shrubs such as blueberry, winterberry, and elderberry. And here is our 40-foot bog bridge. This wooded, marshy area bisects the property, and the thugs have yet to invade it, but they're not far away, right in that woodland behind me. Buckthorn has infiltrated to within 20 feet of this area, but we want to preserve the ecological integrity of this marsh and enhance it. What a great place to look for aquatic life, and what a great place to introduce native marsh marigold or cardinal flower in a sunny spot. Here's an old manure spreader that was used when this property was a farm. I'm standing in the middle of a 3-acre pine grove. When this was a dairy, this used to be a field. But when the field was abandoned, old pines gradually replaced the grass. As you can see, these gnarly old trees like the one behind me have little habitat or economic value. The only plants that are thriving on the forest floor are invasive buckthorn seedlings. And yet, beneath us, there's prime agricultural soils. Our plan is to restore the field and plant it with grasses and flowers such as aster, Joe Pye weed, goldenrod and milkweed that will attract native pollinators. It will become the fourth field on the property. Each field will be mowed at least once every 2 years in the late fall. To prepare for that, the trees will be cut in the late spring or early summer, and the new meadow will be stumped, graded and seeded in the early fall. The pine grove will be cut by Scott Anderson of Anderson Logging and Lumber in Westminster, and the stumping and grading and seeding will be done by Mark Lafferty of Lafferty Enterprises in Ashburnham. There's not much growing on the forest floor of this pine grove, but what there is growing, yep, you guessed it, glossy buckthorn seedlings. The management plan at Dwelly has been carefully planned and researched, but for the first year, it may seem like we're making a bit of a mess of the property. Passers-by and visitors will see trees cut down and uprooted, acres of shrubs, glossy buckthorn, cut down and left in piles, and some plants that have been chemically treated. We want people to be fully aware of what we are doing and why. We want people to understand that if we did not treat the invasive plants, they would gradually take over the entire property, outcompeting the native plants. This has a multiplying effect. If native plants decline, then the mammals, insects and birds that depend on them for food will decline too. Once the invasives are controlled, the native species can flourish. The conservation area will be a place of real beauty that is not only visible to people who explore the trails, but to folks driving by on the Barre Road behind us. The fields will be filled with grasses and wildflowers, and in addition to great hiking trails, we envision a nature trail where visitors can learn about native plants and perhaps be encouraged to plant them on their own properties. Once we have the invasives under control, we plan to produce many more native plants. Dwelly Farm Conservation Area may no longer be a dairy farm, but will be growing a vitally important crop, native plants. Templeton Community Preservation Funds have been approved for this project, and North County Land Trust thanks the residents of the town of Templeton for their support. If you have any questions or would like to help us with this project, please contact us by visiting our website at northcountylandtrust.org. Thank you.